So many games that I want to play on the channel. I wish I had some sort of guidance to help me decide. Well, that's a start. Greetings fellow flatcaps and welcome to the Spectrum. This is my special guest host for today. This is Reggie. He's a 6-month-old French bulldog and he's a snotty little boy. And in today's episode, we're going to be looking at a games company that started off as a merry-go-round manufacturer, which then made a game which rivaled the like of Space Invaders. Galaxian is a space shooter that acts similarly to Space Invaders, but proudly boasts more colours, superior graphics, and more intense-looking enemies to fight. Some of you watching may be aware that Galaxian is the predecessor of Galaga. And if you're expecting me to talk about that, well, I'm afraid I'm going to have to disappoint you, as Galaga comes later in the series. Specifically, 14 episodes later in the series. In all honesty, that makes my job a hell of a lot easier right now because both Galaxian and Galaga evolved in their own ways, with one achieving a lot of success and the other achieving something, at least, making it the least interesting of the two. Kinda like the Hemsworth brothers. So how does a former merry-go-round manufacturer go from that to a dominant force of gaming development that is still alive today? Well, to answer that, we're going to take a quick history lesson starting all the way back to June 1st, 1955. Masaya Nakamura founds Nakamura... Excuse me while I go and get my butcher's board. Nakamura Seisakusho? A company that makes coin-operated amusement rides in 1959. The company reorganizes into Nakamura Seisakushiro Co. Ltd., then secures a partnership with Walt Disney Productions, providing them with the resources they need to expand out into other operations. During the 60s, they began to create electromagnetic arcade games. Remember those? With one of their most popular titles being the submarine shooter Torpedo Launcher. In 1974, they purchased a struggling Japanese branch of Atari, allowing for the release of Breakout in 1976. 1 year later, Nakamura Seisakusho changes their name to Namco and publishes their first ever original video game, GB, in 1978. However, the game does not do well as its main competition was Space Invaders and took all the attention away from it. As gaming entered the golden era, Namco stood out as one of the most successful and prosperous companies at the time, but it took a lot of time to achieve that status. As stated before, Space Invaders was the pinnacle of gaming entertainment at that point, so in retaliation, Namco creates a title to combat against it in 1979, Galaxian. A simple plot involves you as a member of the Galaxian, performing your duty, which is to destroy Martians. Which part of me wonders if that makes me the bad guy here, because these guys are flying with their backs to me. So for all I know, they might just be going home, and here I am slaughtering them. I'm not sure how I feel about this. Just by watching the attraction sequence alone, you can see how it was made to rival Space Invaders. The side-to-side shuffling foes, the ship limited to the bottom of the screen, the general format. Yeah, it wasn't a complete copy and paste of Space Invaders, as Namco added their own twists and improvements, likely to avoid a lawsuit. The most iconic being the attack pattern of the enemy. Rather than shoot back and get one level lower as time goes on, the enemies will instead try to dive bomb you while taking shots with the accuracy of stormtroopers, offering a tactical risk of taking out enemies easier while being an easier target yourself. The different coloured enemies have differing methods of attack. The blue ones will slightly home towards you while shooting, the purple ones home better, and the yellow ones called Galbos will attack you while bringing 2 red ones with them. Taking them out awards you bonus points depending on how quickly and in what order you kill them. As you get further into the game, enemies will become more aggressive and the frequency at which they try and sacrifice themselves for the greater good will get higher. To combat them, you've got a red-tipped ship named the Galaxian. Wow, did it take you like 10 seconds to come up with that name? Just put 2 suggestions on the board and chose that one? The only method of attack is a single shot that moves quite fast and kills foes in one hit. The bullets you fire though hit with fantastic collision detection. I've never been more impressed as to how well a game lets me fire into a crowd and miss consistently. Just look how thin these gaps are, but how snug the missile flies through it. Failing has never looked so impressive. Gameplay isn't the only standout feature of the game. The graphics and sound are fantastic, there's an impressive number of colours on screen at once, considering the time era, the frame rate is fluid, and the sound is way more immersive than Space Invaders. During this period, games were experimenting with improving their graphics. Lunar Lander was creating more complex levels, Osmo Wars were replicating backgrounds, Sheriff was increasing the colour palette, but Galaxian was way ahead of all those combined, as it used all of those elements combined to make a fantastic looking game. Bear in mind, this is only 1 year after Space Invaders was released, so it shares similar technology. That is a hell of a jump in gaming technology, and it paid off, as many players praised the game's graphics and saw it as an improvement over the Space Invaders formula. Despite the praise, however, it was not able to beat Space Invaders in Japan, as it became the second highest grossing game of '79. So close, and yet so far. Even so, Galaxian was so well received that people started trying to set world records, with attempts still being made to break it to this day. Spawning a famous rivalry between Gary Wellman and Perry Rogers, who squared off at the Apollo Amusements in Pompano Beach, Florida in 2006, saw Wellen taking victory and scoring 1,114,550 points. 3 years later, a man named Ard van Wille was spat out of the Netherlands and landed in New Hampshire, where he broke the record and held it at 1,653,270 points. He held the high score until 2016, as David Line smashed the record with 2,010,000 points. Twin Galaxy still recognises him as the world record holder today, but for how long? Well, fuck if I know, why are you asking me? With the success of Galaxian, it was inevitable that Namco would try and take it further by creating home ports and a sequel. In 1981, the sequel, which is 14 episodes away, got made, so we're going to have a little while before I can talk about that one in depth. But what was also released in 1981 was the handheld exclusive sequel, Galaxian 2. Now during the 80s, handheld gaming was still in its infancy, but it didn't stop Entex Industries throwing their hat into the ring to bring us this one-of-a-kind and neat toy. You shouldn't expect anything spectacular, as by comparison it's a lot worse than its predecessor. The graphics are a bit better than a Tiger Watch game, but the sounds are irritating beeps, the number of colours has shrunk to 3, and you only fight 4 enemies at a time. Yet, this is still an impressive gadget for the 80s, and would have been seen as fancy new tech, with an appealing case, and the fact it also featured a 2-player mode where your friend would play as the Martians made it stand out even more in its unique market. And as a little bit of trivia, you can see the Futuretronics version of it in the 2005 Doom movie. While you may get bored of it easily, it was definitely an advanced piece of kit you could enjoy for a while and show off in playgrounds. As a bonus, due to the size of it, you could easily knock out your friend if they beat you. As a side note, I was researching what the earliest handheld console was, and for some reason when I googled that, Shrek 2 was the top result. This has nothing to do with the video or Galaxian, I just wanted to mention this oddity to you. While Galaxian 2 was received well, the gimmick wouldn't be used again, and instead, beefy home consoles were in Namco's sights to advance the series, starting with the Atari 8-bit family. A version was released on both the Atari 400 and 800. I wasn't able to play this one, but a review by No Swear Gamer showed me everything I need to know, so all the footage you're about to see is his. Obviously, compared to its arcade version, it doesn't match up in terms of its presentation. The quality of the sound effects and the sprites have been reduced due to the hardware, yet everything else about it is still well made. Just watching this footage, I can see that the fancy mechanics were still present, if slightly less competent. The enemies still try to dive bomb you, but they don't shoot on their way down. Their vertical movement has slowed a little, while their horizontal is still fast, if a little jittery. For the most part, it plays like the arcade title, it just has a look that isn't as appealing as its more successful counterpart. Like the Hemsworth brothers. The change that confused me was the game's artwork. Now, dear viewer at home, please indulge me on this. Based on what you've seen of Galaga so far, what would you expect to be on the cover of a Galaxian game? Well, if you said Martians, you would be a third right. But if you had also said clouds and wing-tailed horned attractive people, then you would have been 100% right. Maybe if we listen to No Swear Gamer read the game's intro, that will help me understand.
The manual opens with the following: last chance for planet Earth. When you joined the Intergalactic Warrior Fleet, you never bargained for this. Your Earth ship is soaring over the blue horizon. Suddenly, an entire fleet of Galaxians come winging in from deep space. There's no time to get other ships in the air. You're the only one who could stop the Galaxians. But behind the first wave is another, and then another, each faster and more powerful than the last. Can you do it? Can you stop them? You bet you can.
Oh, now I understand. Less. A year later, the Atari 2600 gets a port, and the 8-bit family version was ported to the 5200. The 2600 version was a very watered down port. It still had the formula, but worse sound and graphics. It has 9 different game types which act as a level skip to the level of the same number. The 5200 version is the 800 version with improved upon graphics and sounds but no formula change. And why should you try and improve on something that's already working well? Well, it's working well for now. Video games change all the time, and Galaxian had to do so as well if it wanted to stay relevant to the ever-changing landscape of video games. More ports were made for various consoles, but its next major installment wouldn't arrive until 1990 as, get this, a theme park attraction. Officially going full circle. Project Dragoon, also known as Galaxian Cubed, was a rail shooter that would use laserdisc-based video footage to allow a team of players to shoot down Martians with a light gun. For those of you who may not be aware of what laserdisc video footage means, when it comes to video games, it's the same kind of technology you would see in games like Phantasmagoria, Cobra Command, and Dragon Slayer. It was a very ambitious project which paid off for several years, as it was the only arcade game in existence to allow, are you ready for this? A team of 28 players, all of whom would play simultaneously. The structure, designed by Shingeki Toyama, would see the players sat around the pillar in the centre shooting a curved screen surrounding them. It was shown off in 1990 at, of all places, a garden and greenery exposition during a garden expo in Japan, to then be released in arcades in 92 at Namco's own Wonder Eggs theme park until the year 2000. A smaller 16-player cabinet named the GM16 was also produced for smaller arcades, then an even smaller one to support 6 players was made, then the poorly timed 4-player PlayStation release. Which is the version I'm going to be looking at because, as much as I would like to, I don't have the influence, fame, or money to fly to Japan's video game museum and attempt to play the only publicly available arcade machine of it. Now, like the arcade game, the PlayStation version uses its laserdisc video footage to present the games to you. Now, one issue that games like this would have, depending on the format, is that certain actions that you are expected to perform, like shooting an enemy, could only be done during a certain frame of the video. Do it too fast, and you miss your chance to move on. Now thankfully, this doesn't apply here, as thanks to the enemies being on a different layer to the video footage, you're able to interact with them as soon as they appear on screen, rather than have to wait for a certain frame. Now sadly, I wasn't able to play this one myself, but from this stolen footage, it does look like a good time, and I can only imagine how this would have worked with 28 players. Oh god, I hope that isn't a giant alien's rectum. Namco continues to focus on making arcade machines as they saw the most success there. 1992 also saw the release of the Galaxian parody title Cosmo Gang the Video game. It didn't feel right to not add that at the end. Despite it looking like a fever dream, it's actually a hectic and enjoyable shooter that has a very steady difficulty climb from easy to I want to die. Another contender for an arcade video, I think. I'm going to pause the video here because normally I don't do this, but I do have a genuine question for you guys watching at home. I ask, please, that you tell me in the comments if you would like to see me bring back the arcade series. If you don't want me to bring it back, then I won't be so quick to talk about arcade titles during the 1001 series. But if you do, then I will make this and another game I promised to bring back some of the first episodes when the series makes its return. If you want it to come back, that is. Let me know if you would like this. I am genuinely curious. Okay, back to the video. Sorry. 1994 rolls around, and then Namco releases yet another 6-player Laserdisc video machine, serving as a sequel to Galaxian Cubed, named Attack of the Zolgear, although some people still refer to this one as Galaxian 3. Once again, I am unable to try this one, but would love to if I ever get the chance. After cock-teasing people like me with their arcade machines I never got to play, Namco started putting Galaxian onto consoles again, but with less effort, as Galaga was proving to be the more popular one. Similar to the Hemsworth, Galaxian had become much less popular. So much less popular that I can literally shoot through these final few games on the list with next to no effort because there is next to nothing to say about them. A port of the original was made for the Namco Museum Collection on the Game Boy Advance in 95, but it wasn't until 96 that a little more effort was made. Emphasis on little. SD Gundam over Galaxian is just Galaxian skinned with angrier Megazords fighting in space. In 2000, the Japanese exclusive metal game Galaxy Fever appears in arcades to limited success. The last official game due to be made as part of the series was Galaxian Heroes, that would have utilised the Ace Combat engine in some fashion. But alas, it was never released, with the latest news on it coming from 2015. Since then, no one has heard anything about Galaxian for years. Rumours say it now struggles with alcoholism and runs a podcast that nobody listens to. So, Galaxian. What did I think of it? Well, it's a good game. There is no doubt about that. It's just a shame that it didn't do as well as its sister title and left a legacy with next to no variation. Cosmo Gang did improve on the formula by adding power-ups, giving it a new look and making the enemies more dangerous, and maybe if they tried working with that it would have done much better. But maybe it just wasn't meant to be. As for the original, the one I have to judge. It's a fantastic game that pushes the limits of technology, especially for the area it was conceived in, and does a brilliant job of being a rival to and expanding on the formula of Space Invaders, which is why, with ease, Galaxian is being filed under yes. What about you though? Do you like Galaxian? Is it part of your childhood? Did you ever get to try the 28-player arcade machine? As always, your thoughts are welcome down below. And please also let me know if you would like arcade to come back. In the meantime, while you type out, I thank you for watching and remember you're always welcome at the Spectrum.